Do you fear for the future? Do you worry that we are living in the final days of mankind? Well, you have good reason to worry. Biblical scholars are warning that there are even more signs the end of the world is drawing near after America's surprise attack on Iran. Following the Saturday night bombing on 3 nuclear facilities, a Christian podcast revealed that 2 major biblical verses appear to be coming true, with both predicting turmoil in the Middle East. The first of these apocalyptic prophecies revolve around 1 Thessalonians from the New International Version of the Bible. The verse, written by the Apostle Paul, warned that while people are saying peace and safety, destruction will come on them suddenly. In the hours after the U.S. bombing mission, President Trump, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, and other White House officials repeatedly spoke about peace while discussing Operation Midnight Hammer. Meanwhile, America's allies in Israel have continued to say that the bombing of Iran's nuclear labs has made the world a safer place. The second verse involves the nearby country of Syria and the prophet Isaiah, who said, "Damascus will no longer be a city, but will become a heap of ruins." While the entire city is not in ruins, the capital of Syria has been devastated by the country's civil war and suffered even more hardship Sunday during a suicide bomb attack on a Christian church. Biblical scholars from the Living Waters podcast, which has more than 1.6 million subscribers on YouTube, suggested that events in both Iran and Syria paralleled the verses which foretold of the end times for humanity striking unexpectedly. The verse in 1 Thessalonians, where Paul discussed the day of the Lord, is a biblical concept referring to a future time of divine judgment and intervention. Paul emphasized its suddenness and unpredictability, urging believers to stay vigilant and faithful. Many scholars and theologians believe this verse is directly related to the end times prophecy. The day of the Lord is a recurring theme in both the Old and New Testaments, often associated with the second coming of Christ, final judgment, or apocalyptic events. The mention of sudden destruction amid claims of peace and safety suggest a false sense of security before catastrophic events, which aligns with descriptions of the end times in other scriptures. Following the bombing of Iran's Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan nuclear sites, President Trump said, "Now is the time for peace," in a Truth Social post. The late-night bombing raid has drawn both praise and condemnation from around the world, with critics fearing the move to join Israel's war against Iran could trigger a full-scale global conflict. Iran's allies, Russia and China, have both warned the U.S. of taking direct action in Iran, warning that the move could drag all 3 nuclear powers into World War III. Meanwhile, Sunday's deadly attack in Syria was the latest tragedy to befall the war-torn nation. At least 22 worshippers were killed and 63 wounded in the suicide bomb attack at Mar Elias Church in the WWIII neighborhood of Damascus. Horrifying footage showed blood spattered over the shattered pews and masonry walls following the blast. No group immediately claimed responsibility for the attack, but Syria's interior ministry said a member of the Islamic State group ISIS was behind it. Damascus has faced severe damage from the Syrian civil war, with some areas experiencing destruction due to fighting, airstrikes, and neglect. The civil war began in March 2011, triggered by pro-democracy protests during the Arab Spring. These protests, initially non-violent, demanded reforms and an end to the rule of President Bashar al-Assad, whose family had governed Syria since 1971. The regime's violent suppression of protesters, including mass arrests, torture, and military sieges, escalated into a full-fledged civil war by 2012, as opposition militias formed to fight back. Mass graves have reportedly been unearthed in Syria, with human remains found in the streets of Damascus, as the horrific crimes of Assad's regime have been laid bare in recent months. The Taramon district within the Syrian capital has been spotted littered with bones, after what residents and human rights groups described as years of killings under the rule of Assad. The U.S. had previously been urging Iran to return to the negotiating table, stating that the current regime had no choice but to surrender its nuclear weapons program. A cry for peace in the world is seen by many as a prophetic sign of the last days. The new video from the Living Waters podcast added that many around the world may be lulled into a false sense of security by new calls for peace, despite the increase in global instability, wars, and moral decay they see all around them. The group directly tied this to the ongoing conflict between Iran and Israel, which has seen daily missile attacks between the two nations since June 12. Jerusalem was named alongside Damascus as a city that would face great danger if the end-time prophecies were coming true. If a nuclear war broke out and a bomb was dropped on Damascus, that would certainly cause it to cease from being a city, and that would be a major sign that we're in the last days. What say you? Are we in the last days? If so, what can we do?